Hey class, it's Mr. Dow. I just want to talk to you a little bit about finding sources for the assignment this week where I'm asking you to look for background information on whatever topic is most covered in your paper number 3 story. So if we're going to look for sources for that, and the assignment is to find 2 of those, I would again start at the Citrus databases. And we'll talk about how to find something more specific that ties into your own story. So I'm not really looking for fiction right now. What we're looking for is basic information. There are so many databases at Citrus. I think something that might be make it easier for us is to start at the one called EBSCOhost, multiple databases, and let's just search this one. It gives us some choices on what to look at, what not to look at. So that's my suggestion. Let's go to the EBSCO databases, the multiple list. Now, what you will get when you go into EBSCO is a list of all the databases that you could search. Some of them, like this one, have already been clicked for you. So I know that whatever I put in, they will look through all this, whatever information is in academic search complete. What I want to do is kind of scroll through here real quickly and just see what are the other databases that might help. Let's say I'm going to look up the Vietnam War because I have the story, things they carried. Then I might go ahead and look in America History and Life of Full Text. I'll skip the business, communication. Ebook has already been clicked for me. Some of them are like that. European Views and Americas, I don't need that. The green files about the environment, health. Again, some of these might work for other stories, but for the things they carry, which is essentially a story about a platoon in Vietnam, I'd like to look at more history things. I don't need literature sources here, so I'm not going to click on McGill on Literature Plus. I'm just going to keep looking for the master files, another giant database it's already searched for. So I'll take a look at the military and government collection. Why not if I'm doing Vietnam War? News wires, no. Psychology sources or business, vocation, web news, etc. That's enough. I've got, some were selected for me. I picked about 3 other sources I could look at. Did that kind of quickly. I just wanted to search those places as well. So, all right, I'm going to research background of the Vietnam War. The story, if you haven't read it, is about a platoon in Vietnam, specifically the young leader of that platoon who is constantly distracted, thinking about a girl back home. Not because he even loves her, because being in Vietnam at that time as a young man is so much about staying alive as opposed to really accomplishing anything. It's kind of a terrible place, and that's kind of what you see here. So I will look up the Vietnam War. Now I'll get tons and tons of hits if I just look Vietnam War. So I might go ahead and put another subject below that. I didn't really mess with these at all. Vietnam War, and I'm looking. I just wanted to know about the basic life of a soldier, so I'll say, soldiers. Let's see what happens there. I'm interested in the life of a soldier during the Vietnam War. Let's see, and what do I get here? I'm getting 2,000 hits. That's way too many for me. A lot of these are pretty good. I can find, but I don't have time to go through 2,000 things. There are ways to limit your search. I mean, I could look, I only want full text sources, obviously. Here are publication dates. So I'm getting everything between these 50 or 60 years. And I'm looking at all these things. But since I don't really know exactly what I'm looking for, I'm just going to research the background. I don't really have anything I want to say about that. I'm fine with those selections. Instead, I'm just going to work up here with the search box to see if I can come up with something a little more specific. Soldiers. Well, all right. I'm interested in the experiences of that platoon. Actually, I was thinking about, maybe what I want to look at is the failures in the war. Because a lot of the point of the story is that there's just an issue with these guys being there, that none of them are fighting for any purpose other than just to stay alive or to help their comrades at the time. There's not like an actual objective in that war. So let's just see what happens here. Vietnam War failures. That's just an idea. Just now came up with. All right. I have 486 things. No, it's not really. Well, now something like this: no sure victory, measuring U.S. Army effectiveness and progress in the Vietnam War. Now that is something that actually would tie into the story, because one thing you notice from reading this story is that the soldiers are so focused on just not being afraid that there is no idea of having progress in the war and achieving any kind of military objective. So what I'm getting here is it looks like an ebook. Yeah, that's a lot. I don't want to read a whole book, but let's at least look at the index of this book and see if maybe there's a chapter that goes right to the heart of what I want to talk about. I'll just keep going until I get to the. Here we go. Here we go. So questions not asked. Measuring effectiveness in the. Just skimming some of these. We are winning slowly year of the time of testing. Soldiers interlude, the symptoms of withdrawal. That's interesting to me. because there is drug use in the story as well. So I'll type in number 181 here. That's how I'm going to search this ebook. And let's see what's on page 181. I'll just look at it like a sentence or two. All right, Vietnam is going to poison the veins of the army. That's interesting. Right away, this is kind of good. I think it looked like a different army to me. He remarked as though Vietnam, he was speaking, let's see, one of the things I noticed, I went around, was what I consider a deterioration in the appearance of the troops, the discipline, and other things I'd seen when I first came to Vietnam in 66. That is actually something that does address the story a little bit. So if this chapter, the problem appeared to worsen, if this chapter was about the lack of sort of military discipline and military purpose, that is something that does tie into the story. I mean, it would be helpful also to find some basic sources on the history of Vietnam. What was the involvement and what year are we probably in? Stuff that I can link to the experiences the author had when he wrote that story. But this is not a bad source. I would definitely go ahead and look through that chapter. Let's see what else I can do. I'll do one more thing. So I looked at Vietnam War failures. I could look at, let's see, I could look at history of U.S. involvement. Just get some basic facts on the war. Although I think I'm going to get a ton of sources here. I get 2 sources. Wow, that's pretty stunning. Understanding Vietnam. Okay. Again, I don't want to read a whole book. I'm sure it's an ebook. But I will look at chapter headings just to see if there's something that can help me do this source hunt. All right. Understanding Vietnam. Gigantic book, which I'm not going to read. But I'm going to look at the chapter titles. Oh, here we go. Okay, well, I'm seeing like there's a gigantic history here of just the Vietnamese people and China. I'm looking for really American involvement here. Politics to war. I'm in 46. You know, the story takes place, I think, in the late 60s, early 70s. So I guess I could be looking at that. Specifically, though, I'm interested in any information about the war and the effect on American soldiers. The war, the Americans, Vietnamese society. There's a few pages there I might look at. Let's see, kind of culture, society. Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to look at this whole book right now, but it's clearly there's a lot of information here. So that's my first advice. Look through EBSCOhost. Check off some databases you think might help you. Let us also, while we're here, let's go and take a quick Google search. I want to check something out as well. So here I might type in something more specific than I did on EBSCOhost, but I have to be aware that not all the sources I find on Google, even though they are published somewhere, not all of them are going to be legitimate sources that are viable in a research paper. I'll switch stories here. I'm going to go to the Red Convertible. It's another Vietnam story in a way about 2 Native American brothers, and one goes to Vietnam. When he comes back, he's suffering severely from PTSD. But this is the early 70s, and I don't think that was understood very well. So I can search, I can look up stuff on PTSD. That's one of the topics. What I was going to do is look up Native Americans in Vietnam. There we go, Native Americans in Vietnam. So I look up that, Native Americans in Vietnam, since that's kind of what the story's about. What I want to point out was I have a lot of sources that appear to be pretty good, but there are some that are better than others. And so it might help if you kind of quickly look at where you're getting these sources. This one here is from, I think, a tribal writer, a guy who is a Native American. Let's see, News Maven, sort of a kind of a news source, but I don't know. I've never heard of it. LaSalle EDU, that sounds like, well, it looks like there's a college there. Let's take a look at that one real quick. If it's a .edu, it's probably as a college. Here we go. This is, I don't think LaSalle EDU puts this out, but Vietnam Generation is a pretty well-respected journal. So if it's published something, that could be helpful to me. So I'm interested in just looking at, what was the involvement of Native Americans in Vietnam, because that does tie into the story. Forgotten Warriors, American Indian servicemen in Vietnam. Yeah, and I think what I'm getting here is kind of an overview of how many Native Americans were involved there and what their function was. 42,000 reasons for entering the service. This is some great information here, just great basic information. I'm almost positive I can find stuff in here that will help me fill in the background for a story like the Red Convertible. And like I said, that's not the only thing I researched there. I certainly have an option to consider, like, what was it like? PTSD. Vietnam War there, let's look at that. PTSD during the Vietnam War, a lasting issue 40 years later, long-term impact. Now this is, okay, let's take a look where it's from. This is Public Health, that's a government site, a perfectly good source. This one's coming from some verywellmind.com, I don't know. Here's an NVIA, that's probably, now that one's a .org, I'd probably look at this one. But anyway, it's going to be very easy to find information about the ongoing problem for PTSD for people in Vietnam. And what I would like to kind of find maybe how somewhere in here, I would like to know, well, how well was PTSD understood immediately following Vietnam when so many people suffered from it and I don't think got treatment, which again is what we see in the story there. All right, so what I'm asking you to do this week is to find just two sources that you think can help you with your story. You're not trying to understand the story anymore. You're not trying to look at anything literary. And last week you already looked at the author and the author's life. So now we're trying to flesh that out with some basic background that can sort of give us some context for the overall story and how it goes. So hopefully that was of some help to you. Let me know if you have problems, but otherwise keep going. Find those sources. All right.